What inspired you to write In Love with Death?
Well, it was an incident that happened in 2005.
Okay.
A Japanese Prime Minister was visiting India, and with him came 30 top leaders. And as you know, Japanese names are who's who, like Sony, Toshiba, Hitachi, Toyota, so Suzuki, all these big guys were there. And with them were the Buddhist leader Nakanishi. So as it happened, they were wanting to be together because the Indian political leader was calling on them. And they couldn't find a banquet hall because it was busy season, all the halls were taken up. So I knew the general manager of Hitachi and he called me that Modi-san, can you help us? So I talked to the hotel manager and I said, well, there's such a big people are there. Why don't you clear one of the restaurants? Just clear the tables and it'll become a hall. Oh, I didn't think about it, he told me. So he went ahead and did it. And I said, serve them high tea. So that was done. So when Mr. Toyoda wanted to pay the bill, so they said it was a special arrangement done by Mr. Modi. So bill has gone to him. So he told Mr. Funikawa, can you call Mr. Modi? I'd like to thank him. Luckily, I was in Delhi. As you know, I live in London half the time. So when I went there, this 4 feet 10 inches tall lady, the Buddhist leader, surrounded by all these Japanese men. As I entered the hall and she saw me, she started crying. Tears were rolling down her cheeks. She came forward, she took my hand, and she announced to everybody that she knows me from previous life.
Wow.
So imagine what an impact it had on me that here is such a top leader of Japan saying she knows me from previous life. And then I had started the first private airline of India, Modi Love, so I was restarting. So I couldn't go immediately to Japan. But after 6 months, I did go. And they really rolled out the red carpet for me. At Gokokuji Temple, they had a shogun ceremony, tea ceremony. There was a reception held where Princess of Japan was present. And a lot of wining and dining and taking good care of me. And then I was taken to Kyoto by bullet train where she lived. So at night she came on a wheelchair, and again she kind of, as soon as she saw me, she goes kind of some kind of a spell, and then she cried. She showed a lot of emotions, and then I'm a vegetarian, so I was. She came with 3 aides, so I told Mr. Toyoda, can I order some veg meal for myself because she didn't speak any English. She only spoke Japanese. And she was 92, 93 at that time. But she said, no, she'll order for me. She knows what I want. And surprisingly, it was exactly what I wanted.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And she showed a lot of emotions. Then we said next day that she said, come for breakfast to the house. And she had a chapel on top of her home, which was a Buddhist chapel. So she said, we'll go and pray together. So we went up, prayed together. So when it was sayonara time, when it was time to leave, I said, you're such a big person. You're a leader of 20 million Japanese, almost like the Pope. So how am I going to communicate with you? She said, don't worry, we'll communicate through dreams. What I have to tell you, you'll get a dream. What you have to tell me, I'll get a dream. God has made dreams to communicate with each other. I was so shocked. I never looked at dreams like that.
Yeah.
But came back and then suddenly I did realize that I was getting all kind of different feelings. You know, in this world, if you might meet something who claims, who knows you from previous life and convinces you, it changes the prospect and it changes your life. So I said, what kind of life this is? It's a lease of life. And then these thoughts came that death is inevitable, and if there is no death, life will be unbearable. So suddenly it occurred to me that death is a lovely thing because it allows you to exit from this planet.
Right.
Hence the title In Love with Death. And the book was written, and of course it took me 5 years to write it.
Yeah, I was just going to ask. 5
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And it's your first book?
Yeah, I've already said it, my first and last book, because I don't think I have the
Okay.
energy to write another book.
It's really well written. It was really easy to read and it was really beautiful language.
I'm not an author. I've written it
Right.
from my heart, and that's why I say it's my only book. In 2010, I took it to AP Watt, and they said nobody is going to read this book. So
Oh,
forget about publishing it. So this book was not to be published. I got only 500 copies printed.
okay.
As you can see on the IBN number, there is first published privately 500 copies.
Right.
And then what happened, I was nominated for Prince of Wales Medal for Arts and Philanthropy. So I was invited at the palace for dinner in London by Prince Charles. And then I met his brother-in-law, Mr. Mark Shand, who unfortunately passed away last year in New York. But we had this lovely charity called Elephant Family. Shand invited me to Edinburgh. His host was a guy called Peter Deving. He was a banker who lived on 800-acre estate with a private golf course, private shooting range. So Mark gave the book to him and said, "Read it, Peter. It will change your life." I was quite shocked.
Yeah.
And then came the story about how it got published in 2013. I was invited in Edinburgh by Peter Deving, and he made me stay in his house. And in the morning, he took me out to show the garden, and he had his own grave dig up as a mock grave, and he's written his death date on his grave.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he said, "What you're writing in your book, I have done it." And then there was award ceremony in the evening at New Club, Edinburgh, where about 100 people were invited. And there was this publisher, Berlin. He said, "Oh, this is beautiful book. I'd like to publish it." So that's why in 2014 the book got published. And now in 2015, March, we have the American edition.
Yeah, that really worked out. But things work out how they're supposed to, I think.
Exactly. I mean, as I've said, life is on a roll. And my book always, if you read it, it's in chapters.
Yeah.
And the three most profound chapters are, of course, one on time, because we have limited time on this planet. And that feeling, if we get, like I was saying, you enjoy a piece of cake or you enjoy a cup of coffee, anything limiting you enjoy. If you were not to have a piece of cake but asked to have the big cake, I'm sure you can't get through it. Or
No.
if you were asked to have 20 cups of coffee, you will say, "Oh, no." So similarly, life, if there was no death, and you were to go on living, somebody will be 1,000 year old, somebody will be 10,000 year old. It will be unbearable.
Right.
So as I've said, the shadow of time falls on the body, and body gets frail and frail. It's impossible. Then you'll be like an old building which is in crumbles.
Right.
So it won't work. So death is absolutely necessary because it allows you exit. And also, if there was no death, there'll be no non-veg food. There'll be no. You cannot kill the animals. You cannot kill birds, fish, nothing. So the way God has created this planet, and the way the whole life is here, is everybody is born to die.
Right.
So once that feeling comes that death is important and essential, then obviously you welcome it. Not
Right.
premature death, but at a full age you welcome it. So that's why the title In Love with Death.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the title is very poignant. And one thing I really liked from the book was how you mentioned that children or young people sort of aren't even aware that they'll die one day, because it's really true. When you're a kid, you're not thinking about that.
And you should not be thinking about it.
Yeah.
But as I've written in my book, death is a great equalizer. At birth, we are all unequal. Somebody is a prince born, somebody is a pauper. Somebody is born where there is no food, so child is hungry. Or is sick, and some child is healthy. No two children are alike. While at death, we become all 3.5 kg of dust.
Yeah.
So death is a great equalizer. So what I'm trying to say is people should lead their life with love and compassion and full of charity and philanthropy, because what you have will not go with you,
Right.
but what you give away, your good deeds, your charity will go with you. And if you see death is a great equalizer, then there is no need to hoard, there is no need to be greedy, because you can't take it in any case with you.
Right.
So one of the story which I say, which is loved by people, is that two people go in a casino, and then one is so thrilled because he wins $1 million, and his friend is so depressed because he loses $1 million. So they reach the point of exit where the till is, and they want to cash out. So the cashier tells him, "No, in this casino there is nobody can take any money out, either losses or winning." So they say, "What kind of casino is this?" So he tells them, "This is the casino called World, and you are at the death date, on the death gate, and here you cannot take anything. Everything you have to leave behind." So the one who has won $1 million felt very cheated, and that's life.
Right.
People work all their life, they hoard money, they say, "Oh, we have made millions, billions." You have to leave it behind. You can't take it with you. So that realization has to come.
And what have been some of the responses from your readers after reading the book?
Fantastic. The other chapter which people really loved was grief. Because one of the things I'm telling also in my book is about detachment. Because even Lord Buddha, he had to leave his palace, his wife, and his child, and starve himself to gain enlightenment. So, what happens is that when you have grief in life, you feel very detached with this world. You suddenly feel, what kind of world is this? And if at that point you don't go in the shallows of depression, but take the right path of enlightenment. So, after all, who gives you grief is also under the circumstances you were given grief.
Right.
So, you have to take it positively. And the third chapter which people loved was money.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that chapter.
Because what I'm saying is about money is that money comes with a baggage. I'll tell you a very short story about Leo Tolstoy, who was the great Russian author.
Right.
And he wrote a very beautiful story saying that God and devil had a bet. And devil told God that everybody in this planet is under my spell. He is my child. So God was really surprised to hear that. And he has the power to go in every soul. So he said, "Oh my God, you are right. They have all come under your spell. They become your children. You are opposite me. How come they have adopted you?"
Right.
So, but God suddenly sees this farmer and he says, "See, he is my son." So, devil also has the power to go in the soul. So he says, "Yes, you are right. He is your son. But if you give me 2 years, I'll make him my son." So God says, "Impossible. He's my son. How can he be your son?" So he says, "Give me 2 years. That's all." So they have a bet. God says it can't be done. And devil said, "Okay, it's a challenge." So he comes in his dreams, makes him sell his farm and buy some land on a higher plateau. So that year there is a lot of rain, there is flooding. So he becomes very wealthy. And then next year he makes him sell his land on the higher plateau and buy the land near the river, which is going for a song, because all the flooding that has taken place. So the next year there is no rain. So he becomes very wealthy. He is the wealthiest man in town in 2 years. So he got so much wheat and he makes vodka and he throws a big party and all the girls know that he's the richest man in town. So everybody is flirting with every woman. They are flirting with him. He's getting drunk. So suddenly, as they say, the devil God gets into him. So devil calls God, "Please come here, look at your son." So God is horrified. "How did you do that?" So he says, "I have to make him rich first. Otherwise I couldn't do it." So that's the point. Money comes with the baggage.
Yeah.
It's not easy to handle money.
Right.
So this is the chapter on money, and of course, then there is the chapter on final preparation. That how you have to exit, then you might as well lead a good life. Then, I mean, there's a lot written in the book. You've read it that you have to be aware it's your own life. Nobody can be judgmental
Right.
because you know what you go through.
Mm-hmm.
And people always are judgmental. Oh, this one is right, that one is wrong.
Yeah.
But they don't know
They
the
don't
real
know.
story.
Right.
So don't be fooled by them. Just carry on your life. But you should know what you're doing is right. That's more important.
Right.
So if you are cheating anybody, if you are playing foul, even if the other person doesn't realize it, but you know it,
Mm-hmm.
and later on you'll regret it. So don't do it.
Right. That's good advice.
So that's what the book is, and I hope that people will love my book.
Yeah.
So of course there are many stories more, but I won't be able to tell everything in this.
Where did you find the people who appear in your book?
Well, they are all based in London,
Okay.
and we have made them anonymous at their request.
Oh, that's nice.
So we changed their names, but these are all real stories.
Oh.
Especially
Where did
like-
you find people who wanted to tell their story or who were willing
No.
to?
Well, I had to take help from a professional
Oh, okay.
who was working on that. He helps authors to do some market research.
Oh, interesting.
So we got his help, and through his help, we flushed out these people.
Nice. Yeah, I thought that made the book so interesting to read different people's stories. And I really liked the story about the man who was in prison and the woman who was his pen pal.
Absolutely, that's wonderful. Absolutely,
Yeah.
tells you the importance of time.
Right.
In fact, some of the people I interviewed, I've not put them in, but I can share one interview which has struck me. He was a homeless person. And in London, there is a very top restaurant called Nobu. And
Yeah.
at the exit door, he was homeless, so he was lying down. So we asked him that, doesn't he think that, life is too harsh on him? Because London, it rains every day and you get four weather every day.
Yeah.
And he's homeless. So he shocked me by saying, you must be joking. What? He said, I am having a fantastic time in my life. What? You're lying on the road and you're. He said, do you realize that I know everything that's going on in that restaurant? I watch all the people who go in, I watch all the people who come out. I know who's going with whom. I know all. I can fill more diaries than you can think. So I said, well, he's having fun. So what I'm trying to say, even the people we feel are having tough time, but even then they don't want to die. They want to live on.
Right.
Life is a mystery.
Yeah.
And sometimes some people like this Tetra Pak lady who committed suicide because she said when wealth came from the front door, happiness went from the back door. So it's the irony of this life. Sometimes
Yeah.
with the highest wealth people commit suicide,
Yeah.
and with no wealth they are still loving it.
Yeah. That's great. Well, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.